Anyway, hey, listen, we have talked a lot about leading worship. I want to take a moment for this next session and just kind of snip a word off of that and look at just leadership. Sometimes we can look at worship leading and think, that's just like this big thing that we get to do. There's a big part of that is just leading, being a leader. And so we have had my brother Carl come in and share with us year by year, and I want to tell you a little bit why. First, Carl was a leader before he even asked to be one, because my parents had 5 sons, and Carl was first. So he's always had younger people looking up to him, looking to him, watching him, saying, how are we supposed to do this thing called life? And I'm the second-born son, so I have literally followed him around all my life, trying to figure out how to do this thing, And when we started ACC in 1999, Carl was asked to be the youth pastor. And he served in that role until what year, bro? 2007? That's a long time ago now. Anyway, almost 10 years ago, he was asked to be the college pastor because the college pastor at the time got fired. Not really. Not really. He moved to San Diego and started a church. So, Stephen isn't in here. I'm messing with him. He's not even in here right now. Of course he is. He's got people. There he is, right there. Hey, Stephen. So they started All Peoples. Robert Herbert did, and Carl became the college pastor at that point, and he's been doing that role ever since. And you guys may understand this. You may have seen this or little, snippets of how we've done church and how our events get done. But Carl's acted as an executive producer and producer of World Mandate for many years. He leads hundreds of college students on an annual spring break mission trip called Awaken. And he's run point on production on our Sunday services through the years in different seasons where he's been the main guy leading that, making sure our services are what they need to be from the top down. And besides all that, as our college pastor here, he runs his own weekly service. So you know what that feels like if you have your own weekly service going on. It's like you're running your own church. Now, we would hate to say that phrase. We don't run our own church, right? We don't build our own kingdom. But there's a few hundred people who show up and they run a service, and it's like a full-on church service, right? And then he'll sometimes help us with our own on Sundays as well. I just want to say he's one of my favorite speakers ever. And I know I'm biased, and there's no way to get unbiased necessarily, but it really is one of my favorite speakers, definitely in our church, if not in the world. And here's one of the things I'll say as a brother to introduce him, is that I get to see him live life. And of all the things that he's so good at, and God just gives him this kind of view and a perspective that's so helpful for the church to really serve the people, he is an incredible husband and father. Behind the scenes, his family is amazing. And they're so normal. Like, if you're just around them, it's chaotic. It's just real life chaos family. But they love each other so well. His relationship with his wife is amazing. And they are so open and vulnerable with their lives with us as a community. And I just want to take a moment and say, that is the kind of stuff that really, really matters, right? We talk about all the abilities and the giftings and the strengths and the practice and everything, but when you find out that a leader at home is taking care of what is really most important, it just shows a foundation. And I want to say that to you so you open your hearts, open your minds and your ears to listen today. What we're going to do is we're going to have a little interview, so why don't you guys welcome my brother Carl Gully. That's awesome. I did not know. Wow. It's all family here. Literally, there's like a lot of my family here.
Is this on?
There we go. Oh,
Good
he's
to
got a
see
red
you
battery
guys.
right now, it looks like. Anybody want to help with that?
I can
Nolan.
yell.
Thank you, Nolan.
But be a leader, Nolan. Go get it.
Exactly. Hey, we're going to jump right in. Normally, I would ask him to tell some embarrassing story about himself that makes me look like a champ. And since we're doing a mic change right now, maybe I'll just tell an embarrassing story about him. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Those of us who know Carl and experience his ministry and leadership here, we think of, and I'm saying this so that you understand how to receive this, but we think of Carl as kind of a super leader, What I mean by that, I know it sounds weird, but I kind of need you to give you a context here that we don't just think it was like, hey, bro, you can take care of some stuff. We think when our biggest stuff that really matters comes about, we need Carl on the team, if not leading the team, to do that. And one of the reasons is because he's such an incredible leader. So I wanted to talk about that and just talk about leadership kind of from the guts, like what's going on inside of you, not just like here's my message about this so that, I can have my 3 points in a prayer, but what's going on inside. And what's going on inside of you as a leader. So I'm going to open up with a pretty open question, pretty big question. And just you can tell me if this is too wide open here. But first question is, why are you so passionate about leadership?
That's a great question. I am really passionate about leadership. I think because if you would have talked to me in 4th grade, 5th grade kind of deal and given me some leadership talk or said, are you a leader? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd have said -4. There is just no way I am a leader. I'm shy. I don't even follow people's sentences often. There's a picture in my yearbook in 3rd grade of me just like staring up in space, and it says, wake up, Carl, So I don't think I saw leadership on the horizon. And as I got a little older, I started to latch on when people would share these things about leadership, and I would be like, man, that's awesome. Sure wish that was me, but it's not me. So to me, leadership is such an ambiguous concept, and it just throws like a billion darts in the air when the word is said. And it depends on your past. It depends on whatever picture was in your yearbook and whatever person you heard, whoever put some kind of label on you. So as a result, it's so ambiguous that my passion in leadership is typically trying to help clarify to people what it really is. And so I've always adopted John Maxwell's definition of leadership, that leadership is influence. So what that means is if you were to look at our mom, nobody would be like, oh, that lady is a leader. I mean, she's quiet, she's sitting in the back, she's just, praying in tongues all day, and just kind of sitting back there. She's not doing much, and you wouldn't ever, to get her on stage, it just takes an act of Congress. So you wouldn't think this woman is a leader, but if we see leadership as influence, we watch the way that she influenced 5 boys and a husband who now are influencers, and you'd go, we need her to do some leadership development. But if we said, look for leaders, let's put them on the board, I don't think about would go Laurie Gelly off the back. So I like to look for people who are influencers and call out the area they're influencing and then help them bring power and excitement and just kind of get over the timidity of that, and then bring power and excitement to you can be an influencer as a babysitter, you can be an influencer as a coach, you can be an influencer as a worship leader or whatever it is. I think that's why I get so passionate about it, because I definitely didn't think that was me early on.
So you're sharing with us about, it's interesting because for me as a brother, like my son thinks that I am the biggest, strongest man in the world. I don't know why, because he sees me around everybody else all the time too. But in his world, his kind of narrow view, I am big, strong. And whenever he meets somebody that's really big, we have conversations about like how it would go down. He asks like, so you're stronger than Mr. Deli, right? Mr. Delanere, Chris Delanere. He used to play for Baylor. He's a big guy.
He played tight end for like Baylor.
Yeah.
He's not stronger than Deli.
Yeah. I'm not.
James Mark's not.
But in Jude's mind, Deli can't be stronger than me, so how does he bigger? Like, I don't understand, Yeah. And so, but because of that, that's because of his worldview, that's who I am. So my growing up experience was that whatever Carl said was a good thing. But now when I look back, I realize in your circle of friends, 11, 12, 13 years old, You were not
I was the-
making a
no.
making big splash. In
No,
your,
no,
in
no.
your
They were
social
giving me
circles.
wedgies and pulling my pants down at
Yeah,
PE.
yeah, yeah.
I was not the leader of the group.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, answer this question. So, is a leader born a leader, or is a leader made a
Well,
leader?
I think that's one of the most debated leadership topics ever, and it will always be debated as long as we think about it in the church as long as conservative worship versus a contemporary service. As long as those debates will rage, this born versus made debate will rage. And my opinion is my answer is yes. My answer is yes, because I believe there are people who are born leaders. You see it on them. From 3 years old, they're like, we're all going over here to play with the dump trucks, and everybody just gets up and goes and plays with the dump trucks. And you're like, there's the next president of the United States, And so we all spot them, don't we? And if you look at the life of the Apostle Paul, really, what a great leader. He is sitting under Gamaliel. Gamaliel was not just a Pharisee, he's one of the top 70 that are leading the nation, and he's sitting under one of the top of the top 70. So that means that they spotted Paul and his ability to intellectualize everything, to engage everything with so much passion, obviously because he's standing there when Stephen's getting killed, and he's giving himself. He even says that it's hard to boast more than he could boast. Remember that passage he goes down, circumcised on the 8th day? It's amazing that people would talk about their circumcision is one of the things they could boast about, But anyway, I was circumcised on the 8th day. Take that, And then, as to the law, I was a Pharisee. As to persecution, did so with zeal. He's listing all the things and says, if you've got a reason to boast, I've got more. And then, of course, he realizes that's all a bunch of rubbish, which is Greek for a 4-letter S word that we don't say, that we shouldn't say. And so he's saying, it's all rubbish to me. I need Jesus. And so what Jesus had to do was had to meet him on the road, knock him on the ground, and then say, you're persecuting me. Now I want to get you to know me, and then I'm going to call you to... And then Ananias doesn't want to go and talk to him because he's scared of him. And he goes, Ananias, I'm going to show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake. And now he relies on everything he got from Gamaliel, all of that information to relate to Jews, all of the networking skills, the intellectual skills, the perseverance skills, all those things. He now does it through the baptism of the Holy Spirit, through a life of Jesus, and now we're all reading half the New Testament because of him. Born leader, And again, that just wasn't me. And I honestly never knew I was a leader. Even when people were saying, I think you're a leader, you could lead this group, I would be like, but I'm not Jimmy. You could be a leader. My first thought wasn't Jimmy because I didn't know Jimmy. My first thought was Sean. I'm not Sean. But he was discipled by Jimmy. Well, I'm not Jimmy. But you can spend time with Jeff Bianchi, but I'm not Bianchi. Bianchi leads like everybody to Jesus every day. Kevin Johnson confesses his sin in front of everybody every day. Sean Richmond does everything. He led worship. He preached. He led all kinds of things. And Jimmy's just like the apostolic movement leader of the world. And so because that was leadership, that wasn't me. Okay, so then I'm sitting at this leadership conference called The Summit. You ever been to The Summit by Bill Hybels and those guys that lead that? And I'm a big Summit fan. And I remember my very first one. I went with Kevin and Robert Herber. And we're sitting there in the opening session, and Hybels is talking. And he says there's just something that a leader can do that if the leader doesn't do it, the church suffers. And so I'm leaning over going, well, what is it that I'm supposed to do? And he said, think about it this way. How many of you like to fish? And so I raised my hand. I love fishing and outdoors. And he goes, anybody have a Snoopy pole in here? And I remembered my Snoopy pole at 4 years old, like sticking it in. And he said, and what happened? When you caught a perch on a Snoopy pole, the line bent over, and you thought you had Shamu on there, And I was like, I remembered it like it was yesterday. I hurled Shamu out of the water, and I was hooked from that day forward. He goes, and then you get a bigger one, maybe, a different deal, and you start fishing for bass, and now they're 2 pounds, and now they're 3 pounds. And he's like, and then some of you will get crazy on this, at trot lines that will go after catfish that could be like 40 pounds, 50 pounds. Others of you like to go out to the ocean, and now you're out in the ocean, and you're fishing for like great white sharks, okay? And he said, here's the deal. He's like, I have found that people sit in churches week after week with the Snoopy poles. And they're going, I'm fishing for perch. I'm fishing for perch. And they have no idea there's a bass, there's a catfish, or a great white shark. And for those of us who have tasted the grace and the mercy of Jesus, we have been able to see other people fall in love with Jesus. He said, I have to, as a leader, stand up and look at my people and say, stop fishing for perch. And when he said that, I literally, my chin was quivering, tears were streaming down my face. And I locked in, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm a leader or not, but I can do that. I can stand up at congregations and say, put aside your petty visions compared to the great vision of Jesus. Put aside all of your weariness and your exhaustion compared to the strength you're going to find in him. You're going to give yourself to great hobbies like hunting and fishing and all those things. It will not compare to the vision of seeing a local church be all that it's supposed to be. So give yourself to that. And if you'll give yourself to that, put aside your fishing for perch, you're going to come alive. And I thought, I don't know if I'm a leader, but I can do that. And when I locked into that vision, now I'm hanging out there by a thread going, oh, Spirit of God, how am I going to tell them to do this? Now the chiseling on me starts happening to start figuring out, how do I cast a vision? How do I not talk so much because I'm a gully and we talk a lot? And how am I going to be clear? How do I teach? How do I preach? How do I confront my leader? How do I take confrontation? People don't understand me. All of that is now the great chiseling that God is taking me through so that I can keep standing up there and saying, there's something better for you. So I think that leaders are born and made. And if you're in the born camp, thank God for you. You'll just get things a little quicker. But I think about 90% of the world are made leaders. And we've got to unapologetically give ourselves to seeing them made, And so, yeah.
It's good. So good.
Thanks, Stephen. Wow. Actually, let me do this real quick.
Yeah.
Let me do this real quick. I've done this in some different churches, and I just want to draw this. I told Jace Mark I may draw this out. I think I'm just going to do it. Because if you've seen this, there's a guy named Bobby Clinton, and he wrote this thing called The Stages of Leadership. And I apologize if you've seen me do this before, but not really, because you probably haven't mastered it. So, and he says that from the ages of 0 to 18 are called sovereign foundations, meaning you didn't ask for it. You didn't ask for where you were born. You didn't ask if your parents got divorced, and you didn't ask to be born Muslim, Hindu, or Christian. It happened to you, all right? This is what happened to you at this stage of life, okay? And then he calls this next place an inner life growth. Okay, and in your inner life growth, this is now, especially for those of us who got saved here before they were 18? Yeah, that's most people in the room. So most of the time, around here, there's a salvation place, but it's oftentimes right around this time that then you start to own your faith, right? So you start doing these things called disciplines, although they don't feel like disciplines to you. They feel like pure joy. You just can't believe you get to do this. And God starts putting all of these deep things inside of you. And along the way, different leadership pieces probably start to come out. People notice that. Oh, wow, you're prophetic. You lead worship. You're a good communicator, whatever it is. They start to notice that, okay? And so as a result, there's a ministry maturing that then you move into. And I think ministry is what we're all called to. Some are just paid for it, some aren't. And so we all get to go through this, whether you're a computer programmer or the college pastor. And in this place right here, you're offered lots of opportunities. I think, James Mark, this might lead into some things we could talk about in a minute, but you're offered lots of opportunities to serve. And this could be in your company, this could be in your church. And oftentimes when you are offered that opportunity, whatever opportunity you're offered, it's an honor at one level, but it's typically not in your gift set. Because in this place right here, this is 18 to 30 years old around, okay? How many of you are in that time frame? Okay? So this is around this place. So there's a lot of diversity of opportunity that you're being given. And since I lead college students, what I often find is the great gold that is inside of the DISC and Myers-Briggs and Strength Finders and all that. If we lock into that too young, we get offered opportunities and we say, no thanks, that's not my gift. And so you love worship. You love the prophetic worship roundtable that you get people in and going for it. And then someone asks you to administrate the carnival at your church. And your first answer is, oh, no thanks. That's not my gift. At this age, God's not asking you about your gifts. God's asking you, do you have the character to make it? Because we still got some steps to go through. So character is formed in the place of serving. So your answer in this season of your life is 99% of the time, yes, sir. I would love to administrate the carnival. I was actually hoping you would ask me to administrate the freaking carnival, all right? And so this is where the yes, sir happens. If you turn these things down consistently, you will not be chiseled and made into the leader you need to be. Then later you'll be offered an opportunity, you'll be like, crud, I wish I would have done such and such, okay? So there's a ministry maturing that happens here, and then I always forget the name of the fourth one. Jeremy West, do you know what it is? Life maturing. There it is.
32 seconds.
You're now getting life matured, Jeremy. I didn't know. I think I did this one time at Beltway. I don't know if I remember it or not. But then there's a life maturing. And this is when, typically, if you've gone through all this, now again, if you get saved at 30 and you just start this process, then it's not a magic formula in numbers and ages. But typically around here is things start to streamline a little bit. And actually, over here, you were really insecure, possibly, like, I want to be a leader. I want to be like Jimmy and Sean, like I did. Around here, you get a little bit more confident of knowing who you are and just a little bit more peace, Like, for me, I'm more pastor-given. I'm a pastor. And so I don't have to be an apostle because I'm more pastoral. And I like that about myself. I'm not walking around insecure all the time. But that you get a little bit more peace. And so you start to narrow here a little bit, all right? And then there's this stage called convergence. And this is the place where we all say, this one sweet spot, one thing that you do, if you don't do that, we all miss out. Right? So Jimmy, be the leader of the movement. Get the word of God, the vision, lead us in that place, and don't feel bad that you're not stacking all the chairs in every meeting. Because he will. He'll start stacking every chair. Like, Jimmy, get your butt out of here. We know you're a servant. We need you to go get the one thing. All right? But my scary thing for college students is they start locking into one thing at age 19. You're like, yeah, I can't stack chairs, got to go climb the rock wall. Okay, so then your older years is the legacy years, and you're pouring into every other stage. But I found the people that we want pouring into every other stage are the people who actually walk through the stages, And so that's a little bit of what I'm trying to say, Jason Mark. In my opinion, it is both. But for the one who goes, how do you are made? You typically are walking through these stages to get there. Just quick thoughts. Okay.
Well, I'm reeling a little bit. I'm not supposed to reel as a host. So in the Antioch movement, I remember talking to Jimmy one time about, especially early on, we received a lot of pushback from people who were here, who felt like we expected too much of them. And even, I remember him talking to me about other pastors and leaders where people might leave from our church and go to their church and talk about the pain that they had experienced. And those pastors would come and try to rebuke Jimmy. Or at least ask questions, hopefully. But I remember one minister came and talked with him and said, you cannot expect stuff from, this much from your people. And Jimmy said, I don't expect that much from my people. I expect that much from my leaders. So I remember going, okay, there's a difference, you step into a difference when you're leading. But that being said, the question I want to ask you is, what do you think we can overemphasize leadership in a church?
Softballs here. All right. Yes and no. Again, forgive me because I think because I lead young people predominantly, but I think a lot of you have a lot of young people in your churches, so you can think through this with me. Similarly, I had a person tell me that Antioch Brett was breeding a performance-based mentality, and I took that one to heart. Had to really wrestle with it because everything we do is actually our whole principle is built on. The whole model. I mean, our Antioch started with an idea in a truck with Jimmy in 1987. If you'll read the Bible and do it, I'll change your life. So it feels weird then when we're telling people, read the Bible and do it. And they're like, well, I feel like you're making me perform. And so it's like, well, it's a Bible verse. It's like, here's the word, doers of the word, And so then you have to go back and say, but am I guilt tripping, manipulating, putting people in wrong giftings? It's a wrestle if you love people to go, man, I don't want to do that. And so I just kind of put it out there to my section leaders one time, like, do y'all feel like I'm doing this? I had done a whole series on the spirit of adoption and how that crushes the spirit of performance, but it just didn't seem like it was working. Maybe a bad sermon, but it was not clicking. And I had a girl who's now living overseas, and she said, Carl, Antioch doesn't breed performance. Sin breeds performance. People live in sin, therefore they wrestle with performance. I was like, thank you. You are my new favorite section leader, So we sent her to Greece. And so, yeah, I think there's a place where we have to realize that we can make people not feel valued in their gifts, and that's wrong. And so we need to be champions of people in their giftings, just loving what they bring to the table. They're the best cupcake maker. They're the best painter. They're the best business guy I've ever met. I'm just trying to champion everybody. But here's what I found. During that season, I backed off on promoting leadership in our college ministry, and we are suffering for it right now. I would say our movement is suffering based on my decision. Out of the fear of man, I said, I don't want to do that, and I don't want to promote leadership. And what ended up happening is people began to not feel that little nudge to be leaders, and then all of a sudden we started watching our life groups start to go down. Why? Because life groups are led by life group leaders. And then we started noticing that less people started going into our training school. Well, that was because a lot of the people who stuck with us through the end of their senior year had become life group leaders. So now they weren't signing up and going to the discipleship school. Now I have Don Stedman telling me he's got people ready to go to nations. The only thing they're lacking is they need a leader. They're convinced they're not the leader. They need a leader. So we had teams in stall-out mode because we didn't have team leaders. His projection was that by 2020, our movement would stall out and decline based on its current rate because we don't have leaders to lead those teams. And I sat back, and and I could be a passionate person, kind of run or crash anyway, but this was a crash moment for me where I felt like it rested on me because I had not promoted that Romans 12:8 gift of leadership. In Romans 12:8, actually, if you read Romans 12:8, actually, let me read this to you guys. And I want to read verse 6 through 8. Interestingly, the subtitle is not gifts, it's gifts of grace. And verse 6 says, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. Can we say those 4 words together? Let us use them. If prophecy in proportion to our faith, if service in our serving, the one who teaches in his teaching, the one who exhorts in his exhortation, the one who contributes in generosity, the one who leads with zeal. Or another version says, if your gift is leadership, do it with diligence. The one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. So Paul isn't saying one is better than another. Paul is saying, if you got a gift, use it. And the reason, I believe we should overemphasize leadership in churches. Yeah. Not because leadership is the better gift, but because whenever leadership doesn't happen, the other gifts don't have a way paved for them. Yeah. But when leaders step up and say, I'll do this, or when Laurie Gullies, who don't feel like leaders, step up and go, I see a need. I'll meet that need. I'll do that. And so they start doing that. Think about our mom. How many times she would ask me how to lead a life group, and I'd be like, Mom, just ask them to say their name and favorite ice cream, and she would just... Okay, name, ice cream, just freaking out about this, But now, leading life group, discipling women, sharing on being a woman of God, that comes natural, but it didn't come natural. So when we get people to rise up and be leaders, now there's a way. And now all these people that come to their life group have these different giftings. Their giftings are working. So we have to promote leadership unapologetically. I say all the time, we want our college ministry to be a leadership factory. And then when someone goes, but I'm not a leader, I'm introverted. Like, leadership is not a personality trait. Leadership is influence. Do you have influence? Do you live with 3 people? Great. You've got influence over them. You're a great leader. You're a roommate leader, okay? So I have to put that on people, or else I see the ramifications. The other gifts won't make it, in my opinion. They will make it, but they will not thrive if we don't get leaders to lead out and even convince people that they have more leadership in them than they really know. Maybe I'll pause there.
So this this was a passion of yours that you said, earlier, you were thinking, that's not me, but I like that. I see that, and that's cool.
Yeah.
And then it became like, wow, there's something growing and burning in me. To now, it's a gift you walk in. It's a strength set that you walk in. So, how do you spot leaders? What are you looking for now that you operate at the place you do now?
Yeah, it's really easy and so dang hard. Because what you look for in leaders, what you notice in leaders originally, is that they typically are very passionate people. So you'll notice passion. You'll notice that they get stuff done, and that they bring people with them. Okay. Because Jimmy always says, a leader because they actually have people following. If you don't have anybody following, you're not a leader. It's pretty, leave it to Jimmy. Just simplify a whole, global theological concept. But anyway, but you typically look for people, those three things. In our context, then, we see your passion. We see that you're getting stuff done, and you're bringing people with you. Well, in our churches, then we ask you to be a life group leader. And we go, you're a leader. You have a gift of leadership. And we'll ham that up. Well, they feel honored by that. And so they're like, wow, I get to go to the leaders meeting with Mark Speeder. He's going to train me. That's amazing. That's awesome. And then 6 weeks later, they lead the worst life group in the history of the world. And they're like, crud, I have to go to these leaders meetings with Mark Speeder. And then I have to go back next week. And the romance of leadership fled right out the door, right? And then they start wondering, maybe I'm not a leader after all. Because I grew this group from 15 people to 11 people. And then Mark Speeder grew this from 15 to 40 people. I'm not Mark. So now I find that most people, the things we use to spot leaders, it's actually not spotting leadership. It's actually just spotting someone who is hungry for God. But the only thing we had to offer them was leadership. So what ends up happening is they become leaders. Some are gifted that way, and they will continue to use that leadership gifting. Others will go through an identity crisis soon. Because they'll hear some message like, leaders have a bias towards action. That's one of the things I look for in a leader. I'm looking to, do you just sit there or do you get stuff done? All right? That's why I often say, if I die tomorrow, just let Maddie Phoenix lead the college ministry. She's best leader, I know, ever. She's just always walking around going, here's the last 10 things I did. I was like, I didn't ask you to do those 10 things, but thanks. We just got better because of you. So they have a bias towards action. So someone sits there and goes, I don't have that. Leaders are motivated when they hear visions about seeing blah, blah, blah done. They're like, I don't feel motivated. Like, I walk out of my pastor's vision talk, and then I go turn on something from Bethel, and I watch that, and that motivates me. So I guess I'm not an Antiocher. And so there's this identity crisis that starts to go on because we told them they're a leader. We identified leadership and defined it, in this very little narrow way. And then they have something that messes with them. So let me give you an example. I raised up a guy, this Kappa Sig guy. All Kappa Sig guys are sinners. Yes. Just kidding. Chad Friege was a Kappa Sig, and he was one of my favorites. No, really, wild party guy, radically gave his life to Jesus a year and a half ago, has been just abandoning himself to the purposes of God. He and this other guy who was a frat guy as well, and so proud of him. Instantly, they start reaching out to people. We started a life group this last year, and it's been near revival. It's just been amazing. But then the summer hit. He did great all summer, didn't hit typical pitfalls. But when he came back, I started to notice when he would speak in life group, he was weird. And this is literally maybe the best looking guy on Baylor's campus right now, next to Baylor Bresman, who I brought with me this morning. And he's like, His name is Baylor, yeah. But this is what I'm talking about is not Baylor. But anyway, this other guy, he's a model. People love him. Business, just amazing. Everybody in his fraternity thought he's amazing. He's just got it. Literally, girls will walk up to him on campus and just kiss him. He's had to be he told me, he's like, it happened a few weeks ago. This girl just kissed him. And he was just like, I love Jesus. He's like, he goes, what do I do in those moments? I was like, well, it happens to me every week too. I understand. So I'm telling you, the guy's got it. And now he's speaking in life group in this little circle, and I'm going, I don't know what you're talking about. And Maddie's going, are you going to teach him how to talk in life group? I'm like, I shouldn't have to. Like, what am I doing? How am I handling this? And then he started pulling back. I can just feel it. I'm an intuitive guy, so I can just feel he's not engaging. Then he no-shows 3 meetings in a row. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, man, we were having conversations about you doing our discipleship school, mission, ministry stuff in the front, and now I can't get you to come to a meeting. And so I'm showing up at discipleship, not sure if he's coming because he won't respond to any of my texts. And I get to the meeting on Friday, and I see him, and I sat in my car, I waited on God, I said, Spirit of God, how do I handle this? Because I need to rebuke the tar out of him. And I also need to set our life group up for multiplication. So how do I do this? And I felt like the Lord said, just start talking about the multiplication and I'll lead you from there. It's like, that doesn't make sense, but great. So I walk in and I'm like, guys, I want to talk to you about our life group multiplying. And I start drawing out this whole thing. And one of the guys was like, that's awesome, we can do blah, blah, blah. And I can just tell he's just sitting there like this. And so I get done with the whole deal. And he engaged it a little bit here and there, not much. And then he goes, the only problem is just I'm not sure my schedule will allow that. Okay. Now, in all honesty, his major is maybe the toughest major that Baylor has to offer. And but his bummer is I had just heard him tell someone else, aren't you glad to be a senior where our major isn't very heavy anymore? He had just said that word 12 minutes earlier. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm going to jack him. And so I said, okay, well, unpack that a little bit because I just heard you say you're not as busy. So what do you mean? So he starts to talk a little bit. He's just walking in circles. And I said, listen, I can tell you're pulling back from me. You no-showed this meeting, which was maybe the most important leadership meeting I've ever hosted as a college pastor. It was dishonoring that I worked so hard and you stayed up late and wanted to sleep in. Then you no-showed life group. You did not tell us, and we had to pull in a life group member to do your job, and you dishonored her in that. Then you no-showed a third meeting, and actually then our college service as well. And that was dishonoring to your section, and it was dishonoring to me because I'm leading this service. And the guy next to him was like, oh God, why am I here? And I'm going through all of this stuff, and I just said, this is not an issue of whether you're busy. This is an issue of what you prioritize. So I need to hear from you what you're going to prioritize, and secondly, why your priority was so strong the last year, and it's not anymore. He goes, because I don't feel it this year, and I don't know why. And I said, well, what we do in the kingdom is not about feelings. What we do in the kingdom is about conviction. So I need to hear from you, do you carry this conviction for the local church? Now, remember, I've walked with this guy for 1.5 years. I didn't meet him last week. He's not a freshman, okay? And he just goes, I'll have to pray about that. And now I'm stuck. And I wait on God, and I'm literally in one of those 2 seconds of praying in tongues, and God, give me an answer right now. I feel like God said, tell him he's prophetic. And so I pull out Ephesians 4, and I go, so-and-so, can I tell you something about your life? And I could tell he kind of looked at me like, what else are you going to say? You just ripped me to shreds. What else are you going to say? And I said, in Ephesians 4, it says there's 5 types of people. There's apostles and prophets, evangelists, teachers, and pastors. You're prophetic. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, I can tell prophetic people because they walk into rooms and they see things that other people don't see. And they get even frustrated at things that they do see. They're very black and white, which is why the mistakes you made this last week don't make sense because you're black and white. Those are black and white mistakes, and I'm surprised you made them. However, prophetic people typically feel isolated because nobody understands them. And it was like on contact. When I said isolated, bam, he starts crying. And I said, so my gut hunch is you're walking into your business classes and you're walking into the church, and no matter where you go, you don't feel like you fit because you're a prophetic person. You're called to see things other people don't see, and you don't even have the language for it. And so it's driving you crazy. And maybe on top of that, this kind of ties in where I was going, Jason Mark. I said, maybe on top of that is the fact that people have been telling you since you were born that you're one of the most amazing, gifted leaders. And when leaders talk, you don't feel inspired. And now he's a blubbering mess. And I said, so you're bucking against making money in the business, about these concepts of making money. We've gone around on this. You're bucking against the structure of life groups, partially because structure irks you. You know how to do it better than most, but it irks you. you think this way and I think this way. So it's now you're pushing away from me. And I said, I don't think you and I are done. Because it says God gave apostles and prophets. And while I'm not really that apostolic, in your situation, I am your apostle. Like I'm the college ministry leader. And I think you and I just need to be a little bit more married to each other. Because I need you to see what I don't see. And you need me to help lead the way you can't. And I just think if you'll do this with me, I'm with you to the death, bro. And I mean, now we're just all blubbering messes. The other guy's crying. You know, we're all just like, what's going, you know? And it to me goes, I'm in. And I go, you want to pray about that? No, I'm in. You just told me everything about my life. And I thought something was wrong with me. Like a demon needed to come out. Now I see that's who I am. I'm in. And I thought, God, if I could just like copy paste that to like 600 people. It never happens that way. It finally happened, you know? And and so is he a leader? Yes. And I told him this story about one of our dear friends, said R like Claire and Kate Harlan. Kate was radically fired up about Jesus, but she did crazy things, like went to the art school when she got to get the tongues and talk speaking in tongues in front of all her friends, like, look what happened to me at Antioch. And I was like, dang it. You know, so she would mess things up. But then she got it under control. And then same way, she started to buck against the structure, and I could see it. It's because you're a prophetic person. So I pull those people very close to me, or else they'll put the bullseye on me. So then I'm like, bullseye's not me, bullseye's hell, and I see you. And so let's work together. And she had a gift to be able to pull people who think in circles, who walk in room and don't feel like they fit, because everybody wants to walk into your church and say, I don't belong here at Antioch. They will say there's some mold at Antioch they don't fit in. Interestingly, everybody you talk to says there's a mold at Antioch. I'm like, well, somebody's got to fit in that mold. Everybody feels like they don't fit in it. Will someone please tell me who does fit in it besides Jimmy? Someone else has to fit in the mold. So, but what they're saying, their concept is there's some mold they're not in. And I think that Kate had the ability to take all those people, and then she could come and talk to me in a way that I get it, and then she'd go talk to them in a way that they would get it. And so because of the way she led the prophetic, during that time we had more people trained, equipped, and walking in the prophetic in our college ministry than maybe ever. But it was because she said, I'm going to hone this leadership gift, and then she could come and get close to me. So I think that's what I'm trying to hit, James Mark. Like, I'm trying to get people I want you to be able to spot leaders, but then once they get going in leadership, start to notice that leadership may not be their ultimate gift, but if they keep refining that, it will make a way for the other gifts. So I spot these things, but then I'm always looking for what is the other thing inside of you and trying to encourage you. There's something on that. Keep going. There's something in that. Use the leadership gifts you have to make a way for others, but you're probably going to want to hone in the pastor thing or the teacher thing or the evangelist piece. That's a whole other story I won't go into.
Very helpful. I figure in a room like this, there's lots of us, because we operate with high-level leaders, you know, and some of us in this room fit inside that type A mold a little bit. I don't know why I'm saying some of us, because I'm not one of those people. So I figure this is very helpful for some of us. We're talking about being helpful to others as he's ministering to someone else, but receive that help for yourself as well. And speaking of that, we do, the worship leaders in the room deal with the senior leader level, so that whether that's the pastor who speaks every week or most weeks, or depending on how your structure works, the person who's leading your church, or maybe you're influenced by or communicate a lot with one of those top two leaders, whether it's an executive pastor, depending on your church. There's a lot of people in the room who are, you serve in your church, and your connection is the worship leader, So we're not all worship leaders or worship pastors in this room. But yesterday, we had some time to take where there was kind of a volunteer conversation going on and a worship leader conversation, and both of those were about serving well the people that we serve, So for the worship pastors, worship leaders, those people serving the senior leader, working with them, it's a joy, can sometimes be tricky, can be frustrating even, and also as a volunteer, who's kind of, the people in this room are like locked in volunteers, not just somebody who just walked in the door, They traveled to get here. So serving the worship leaders, serving the worship ministry, as well as the rest of the leadership of the church. So we had a long conversation about that. It was really good. A lot of Q&A and discussion about it. But Carl, he's always operated in that level. So in his college ministry, he is the senior leader of that. One of Jimmy's trusted friends, confidants, and strategists for how we lead our church. So I know you weren't a part of the conversation, but I'd love to just hear you speak to us on this topic of worship leaders, senior pastors working together.
Yeah, this is a whole session in of itself if I was to take that time. And,
Yeah.
I've done the four-eyed worship leader before and talked about a little bit about
Yeah.
your interactions there. But I think one thing I've been thinking about recently, whether it's me walking with Jimmy or it's what I need from my producers who are with me and my worship team is with me, is I think about that passage in 1 Peter 3 where he's talking about husbands and wives and he turns, he's talking about the wives need to submit to their husbands, and he turns to the husband and says, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. And I think that since we want ministries to be families, I think that in many ways the senior pastor and the worship leader work together like a husband and wife. I'm not calling one a boy and one a girl necessarily. I'm just saying, in general, there is a little bit of that relationship that your job as a worship leader is to serve the vision of that point leader. And we want then the point leader to live in an understanding way. And that's a whole other message because they often don't know how to, especially if you're artsy. They're like, I don't know what to do with you. Let's go talk to them, and so go to the worship school, and so it depends on if you have like a Robert Herber, who's very creative and he thinks that way, and versus someone who may not be that way. That being said, I actually think that live in an understanding way goes back and forth because, for example, at times someone will say, what do we do to get Jimmy to speed his sermons up? If he doesn't get his sermons up, we don't have his scriptures. We don't know his topic. I don't know what ministry time song to play. I need him to hurry that up, okay? To live with Jimmy in an understanding way on that, for you guys as worship leaders, it'd be like, when you write a sermon every week, it'd be like asking you to write a song every week. So some of you do write, like Fuller writes like 3 songs a week, but he doesn't want, any of them to go on stage because they're not that good, like they're Davidic psalms, not like let's do a song that the whole congregation can sing. So that's one way. So I need my people to understand, like, okay, well, what if you had to produce, like we work year round to get that one album out. We got 7 songs or 8 songs. What if you had to do that every week for 52 weeks? So now because what do you do as a creative person when you're stuck and someone says, you have 20 minutes to get unstuck and give me something very creative? Yeah. You're trying not to flip them off. And you're going, listen, you don't cram creativity. So back off. Preaching is an art form. So like when I'm being told, cram it in, I'm like, God, and it just feels like I'm just getting stifled. And so I think that, so what I try to do in those situations with Jimmy specifically is I just try to get in the trenches with him and just how can I help you? What can I do to serve you? What can I, do to get in there? So I think that the pastor, worship leader, and I know that's a little bit of a producer, but some of you function in double forms of worship and producers. And so I think a lot of it is just breathing in that, living in an understanding way together so that, there's a thought there.
You just really feel, it's like, when you're having these conversations, there's really sometimes can be frustrating things come up, and we want to be truthful and honest, but there's also a lot to be said, I think, for just when you feel the Spirit of God on something. Like, don't you feel the Spirit of God on that? I know I've been frustrated before, and I'm like, I just need to get my point across, and I need words for it. Somebody help me so I can just get my thoughts together. And this isn't saying don't have a conversation, But this goes, I would feel much better about that conversation if I started there, So let the Holy Spirit lead us in
Actually,
this.
let me say one thing about
go for
that,
it.
because one thing we've learned even in our production meetings is it just depends on your temperament and your leadership style. But I think that one way, practical way you do that, live in an understanding way, and what you were just sharing, J. Mark, is you have to understand that not every meeting is a philosophical, let's talk this round the horn meeting. If you want to talk round the horn about philosophy, you will drive your point leader batty. Because if they come in and in the back of their head, they're like, I have to get feedback from last week, plan this week, make sure the props are ready for week 3, and I want to throw 3 stories by you to see if they work. And then the worship leader starts by going, hey, I just want to talk about kind of our concept of the whole fast song, medium song, slow song idea, and just wanted to see if we could kind of talk that through to see what our vision, DNA, and culture is. And you're like, wow, wrong meeting, you know. And so he'll usually entertain you for a moment, but you keep doing that, and he will walk in and he will make sure that a wise leader would pull you aside and say, hey, there's philosophical meetings and there's tactical get it done meetings. You're bringing philosophical meetings into tactical. So let's set that aside. A lot of you would be like, well, then where the flip is the philosophical meeting? You know, you haven't done that in 5 years in our church, you know. And so this is where you have to learn language to be able to say, hey, I love these tactical meetings. I would love sometime to have a philosophical meeting. When would that be a blessing for you? It's things like that that are living in an understanding way of what is that leader carrying. I've just bulldozed over that one a million times for sure in the past. So I'm saying what I've done wrong and learned now how to do it right. Right or better. Yeah. Righter. Righter.
A couple more questions. This is you being like the senior leader, the communicator, and a service builder. What do you need from a worship leader from your position?
It's so multifaceted. So it starts with, I remember Christine Kane one time telling me, when I asked her about her team, she said, I need them to, if they can't get holy and stay holy on their own, they can't be on my team. I thought that was a real pastoral way of saying, deal with yourself, because I'm not going to. And so, which it wasn't pastoral at all, but you know, she's not pastoral. And I think that I've thought that before. I've thought in the complexity of everything going on, I want to walk with my leader, but the one who has clean hands and a pure heart is the one who is going to ascend that hill, and I can't always keep my the tabs on the entire worship team to see if they have clean hands and a pure heart. I need them to own that themselves. If I find out months later, big problems, it breaks my heart. I'm just like, you've got to be kidding. You've been on the stage week in and week out, and then what's the worship leader's response to be? Well, you're so busy. You're right, I am so busy trying to get everybody to have clean hands and a pure heart, you know, and so that's what you are supposed to be doing. So I need you to own that, and I need you to lean into me if we don't already have some weekly time. I need you to lean into me on that one. That's a heart piece. Then, you know, we used to do the old heart and hands. The hands piece is, I need my worship leaders to get stuff done, regardless if they think it's their gift or not. I need them to do the little things that nobody else is going to do, and here's why. As a leader, I work with volunteers constantly. I think I'm giving you a great privilege by volunteering in the local church, so I don't feel bad about giving people an opportunity to volunteer. I would volunteer. That's what I did. I volunteered, and one day they're like, let's just pay you for that, you know. So I love the volunteer. At the same time, as you are given these different volunteer opportunities, different leadership things, I need you to own and to see the little things that no one else is going to do and do them, or else I, as the leader, will feel like I have to do them. And then I will, in my head, shrink your influence at our table and not even know I'm doing it. Because I walk into a meeting and I say these things, you don't do them, I will make sure they get done. If I have to sleep 1 hour tonight, I hate drop balls. So I will stay up all night and I will get it done, and I'll come to the next meeting and I'll be thinking about things that needed to get done, and I won't even say them out loud because you didn't do them last week. You're probably not going to do them this week. And if I'm gifted at confrontation, I might confront you on that and help you do that. If I'm not gifted in confrontation, I'll just be like, never mind, I'll do it myself. Yeah. And then 3 months later, the worship leader will be like, I just don't feel like you trust me with things or whatever. And it's a miscommunication breakdown. But when I give you stuff, you don't do it. You know, I heard a leader recently once say that someone came to them and just said, I feel like you're micromanaging me. And he said, I started laughing at them. And it's like, do you know on a scale of 1 to 10 how much I want to micromanage you? Like, none. I do not want to micromanage you. But because you don't see what I see and you won't do all the little things, I have to get over you and go, do this, do this, do this, do this, this, you know. Like, if you'll just do that, you won't ever see my face again. And the guy was like, do what? You know, he's like writing as fast as I can, you know, and I would love to not have these interactions, you know. And so I think that I just need that I will get this done. I will make the little things happen that's going to make this worship team, worship time really work. And I will go back to the living understanding way. I think just knowing my heart is really big. I need them to know I really am for them, even though we may not spend much time together. I need, in my case, Seth Finley. I just don't get a ton of time with Seth, And I was thankful he reached out to me this summer and said, hey, I know we bounce around. We're always together at events, but I don't feel like I ever get any one-on-one time with you. Could we do that? And so we went and spent a couple hours together. He just, reached out to me a week ago. He said, hey, I'd love another re-up. And I was thankful he leaned in on that because I don't have a lot of time to spend with Seth. And he's in some major decision-making times and lots happening with his own personal band. And so we need that time. But I love that when I'm with Seth, I'm not guessing where I stand in status with him. You know what I mean? He did beat me in arm wrestling last week, so I hate him. But other than that, we're still very close. And so I love that he just he leans in. He knows my heart. He knows I'm for him. He's all in. He overslept and missed a meeting, and I love that he just was like, I'm a bozo. I missed that one. He's like, he made some long text to me that was like, you will never see this happen again. I'm on your team. And I just love that he leaned in, and it made me chase him. It makes me trust him more, want to give him more responsibilities and that kind of stuff. So I think that just knowing my heart is a big deal. I'll say one last thing, and that is that worship leaders are culture shapers. And I need my worship leaders to help the worship team, and all of them be culture shapers on and off the stage. On the stage, that typically means engagement, right? We need everybody engaged. Yeah. Off the stage, that means engagement. So that doesn't mean that you do something on the stage and then you go sit in the back and watch the week that you're not leading. Yeah. That also means that you don't just go sit in the green room the whole time and just leave me stranded out there to drag an entire room up a hill, You know what you can do for me as a worship leader is start some house fires. Go and get a few people in a room, and the very thing that got you going in worship, do it again. I need those to happen. When I find out that my worship leaders are like, hey, we're all going to come over to our house, we're just going to pray and seek God, it's going to get crazy, so don't bring your freshmen. We'd love that. Let's everybody come on over. I'm just like, thank God that that's happening, because it can't just be in the sanctuary. And I've got 3 soccer practices tonight, and I can't be doing that. So the fact that my worship leader is doing it just always breathes fresh life in me, because that means that they're going to be excited, kind of like you would do when you were first writing songs and stuff. You show up to every birthday party with a guitar, and then we all started worshiping, and it's just here we go. And I need those little house fires to start. And when someone owns it, Caleb did a great job of that when he was around, and John Mark Buckner did that a lot. And I just love when those people do those things. That's what I need. Yeah, and so.
Okay, well, I want you to stay all day. But you have 3 soccer practices. Yeah, so
I just got discipleship I've got to go to.
Okay, last thing, and you could even say if you don't want to take time to answer this, but
okay.
I think just maybe take a step even more personally as we're talking about leadership. How do you get, as a leader, how do you get what you need personally?
It's a good question, and it's typically that's another all-day seminar, but because the sustainability question is big for all of us as leaders, especially if we have a tendency if you're a run hard and crash person, or if you feel some people will use the phrase, I have a small capacity running with people with a big capacity, and I need more downtime, and that's a whole other conversation as well. But there can be a propensity in all of us to think we're not making it, and we want to make it, but we just feel like we need more. And I'd say that's how I started this year out. I started this school year, back in August, very nervous, because whether you have energy or not, these freshmen are showing up on your campus and they're ready to go. These lost people are showing up in your city and they need help. So it doesn't matter at one level if you're ready or not. It's here they come. And while I could do a whole talk about about your schedule, I do whole things with leaders about your schedule and planning and knowing your limits and all those things. I can do all of those talks some other time. I just want to say that what's helped me in this season was really is boasting in my weaknesses on this. And so I got my team together and I just said, which is Maddie and Meredith. and my wife Blair, and I said, I just want y'all to know I feel more fruitful than ever and more fragile than ever, to steal a phrase from Jimmy. I feel like we are seeing the kingdom of God explode, and I don't have the emotional stamina to handle the problems we're facing. And it makes me nervous. But people are coming on, our people are coming, and they need us. And so I just need y'all to speak into my life and go, do you see anything about the way I'm giving, things I'm giving myself to, or are you thinking, wow, Carl's turned 41, he's slowing up in the college ministry game? And it was hard. It was very humbling to kind of put myself out there. And when I said fruitful but fragile, Meredith just smiled, and I was like, oh, she's going to level me. She could just like be very direct. And she just smiled, and she's like, I'm glad you said that, Carl. I feel the same way. And I was like, really? When Maddie said it, I about fell out of my chair, because she takes like a nap every 12 years. She cries once every decade, and she just, I didn't realize that she ever got tired, And so it actually was just like, great, we're all on the same page, and we're going to move forward with passion, but we're fruitful, but we're feeling very fragile. It has made us, it has made us just be very alert to start our meetings off with worship and prayer and abiding in Jesus and say, we've got to have you, God. We've got to have you, because we don't feel the raw energy we have felt in times past. Now, by God's grace, some adrenaline snowball has gotten going, but you can't live off adrenaline for long. And so there's some other things you have to put in place. I don't have time to, I'll go into another time maybe. But I just think that I would encourage people on the sustainability thing to just always be walking in great joy in your job, but have a couple people where you can be very weak and just don't feel like you have to be a superstar. If in every meeting you're whining and complaining about how hard it is, that's on you and you need to change. But if you're able to just be weak and vulnerable and say, here's where I'm fruitful, here's where I'm fragile, I think you're going to find teams that are going to rally around you and at times speak hard truth, but at the same time speak the encouragement into your soul that you need to keep going. So that's how I'm making it in this season. I have a lot of other things I've put into place, and I'd encourage people to watch Wayne Cordero's message. We showed that to our section leaders this year. It's called Dead Leader Running, and it may be one of the top 10 messages I've ever heard in my life. Have you heard that, Jeremy? Yeah. One of the best messages on sustainability for leaders that has ever been produced, in my opinion. So you can go to you wrote a book called Leading on Empty, and I've read that one and devoured it and stuff. So I would encourage you to go for those things because it's a myth that you can just keep running hard and not ever feel it. You will feel it. So the question is just, how do I handle what I'm feeling, but yet still attack this vision with this great people?
So great, man. Well, yeah, we can clap for Carl, for sure. Very helpful. We're going to take some time and have some discussions at our tables here. Before we do, and before you leave, man, we'd love for you to pray over us. Just any and all of that stuff that you were saying.
Yeah. And so, Lord, we just call out to you and say, may the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us and establish the work of our hands, God. Yes, establish the work of our hands. We believe, Lord, that this great privilege you've given us of leading people into the presence of God, this grace that is on us only because of your great mercy and redemption, Lord. We just ask, Lord, in the way that in the days of old they lay hands on leaders in the early church, we're asking you to be the one that would lay hands on us, God, and put your beauty on us and establish the work of our hands so that there really is a fresh zeal for the presence of God in all of our churches, that people would love the presence of God, and we would do all these things that we do, the mundane, the things that people don't see, the things that exhaust us personally, so that we can create that funnel for people to run into your presence and be changed. And so I pray, may there be grace for vision to connect this morning for every woman and every man in this room, to be able to see that all the time in the trenches and all the time doing the little things that's facilitating a place for people to meet with you is worth it. And so I'm asking, God, that they would not grow weary in doing good. For in due season, they will reap a harvest if they do not give up. And we are asking for all of our churches to be hubs of God's presence, Lord, where people come and their mountains melt like wax right in front of them in the presence of the Lord. And so I just curse the devil, and I stand against any way he would speak lies about their gifting, their identity, their relationship with other people on their teams. And I'm asking that truth would reign, that they would leave
Waco, Texas, going back into their settings with fresh clarity, God, and fresh ability to hear your voice and to obey. And so I'm asking, Lord Jesus, even in these next few days, as they collaborate together, there would be a holy unity around these things, Lord, and great zeal to be able to pursue your vision, your dream of seeing these Acts 2 churches that are fully functioning for the sake of others knowing Jesus. And so we just want to make you famous, God. Fill us with your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.